This podcast is part of the Treksphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit Treksphere.com.
I think my microphone is a total piece of crap. But you already knew that. Because I say it every show that my microphone's terrible, and then you're falling asleep. As you know, this is the measure of an episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a genuine Star Trek episode, and not just an episode that I felt like we have seen before, but we haven't. It's like the deja vu of episodes. Ironically, because there is, I think, a Voyager episode named Deja Vu. I'm Paul.
I'm Jonathan, and we do this with 3 criteria. Is there sci-fi? Just any sci-fi in the plot. Maybe just a little bit somewhere in there to justify this being a Star Trek episode.
We're begging you to give us some sci-fi. Please, Star Trek.
Nope. But if there was sci-fi, would it be presented in a unique or novel way? And is there a character who goes through some kind of ethical or moral dilemma? Which I'm actually really glad we added that one, because I do feel like that does come up often enough, and it's not just a challenge that has to be overcome. Like, it's not always just a problem that needs to be solved. It is genuinely somebody goes through some kind of internal conflict. And I feel like that is what makes that is what sets Star Trek apart from other general sci-fi. Anyway, I'm Jonathan.
Well, I'm Paul. And to Roddenberry's credit, that is sort of what he set out to do. He set out to make Star Trek not just a science fiction show with laser guns and spaceships, but some sort of moral foundation. So good for him. And good for Voyager for abandoning it. What are we watching? We're watching Voyager Season 2, Episode 14, Alliances. Something we have definitely seen before. Hoping to strengthen Voyager's strategic position in the quadrant, Janeway reluctantly seeks an alliance with... So, what I have written here, or what is supposed to be an alliance with the Kazon. Yeah?
Yeah. I
have written with ethnic Kazon. I don't know...
I mean, given the episode, you're not entirely wrong. We do learn that there's like roughly 37 different Kazon tribes.
That's true. Lots of different ethnicities within the Kazon. I've seen this. I feel like I've seen this a million times for some reason, and I don't know. We have not seen this episode, right?
No, we have not. I have not seen this episode, I don't think, ever. This was not familiar to me at all, besides the fact that everything in it was stupidly familiar.
Familiar? Yeah, I guess that's true. It did seem rather odd, because I feel like we have seen an episode recently that featured the guy, like the mutineer. Not the mutineer. What do you call that? Someone who betrays and goes to the side.
Oh,
saboteur.
Deflector?
Defector. What do you call it?
I put an L in there.
Treasoner?
A traitor?
Treasony? Traitor. Ha ha ha!
Sorry, that's a lot better than deflector, which is what I said.
Oh, deflector. They all make sense.
I mean, just everything bounces off him.
Like plot logic?
Yeah. We did see him. He was the one who fell into the open warp shaft.
Right, but that was much later in the show.
Yes.
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It was in season 3, but yes. Okay,
so it was very interesting to me that they had seeded this character so early on. I guess it's the middle of season 2. It's not that early on, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And the Kazon and Seska's pregnant. It was sort of like a recap of all of the villains in Star Trek Voyager.
Uh-huh.
But I want to know what you thought of this episode. Right off the bat.
I thought that it was a spec script from somebody who was in script writing 101 college class, and somebody wrote on it something like "get rid of it," and it got swapped with another note that said "move forward with," and so we got this episode. This episode had, I guess, the crew acting really wasn't bad. I did like the moment with Tuvok and Janeway, but everything else, like all of the new players, the guest stars, everything was just played very one note and stereotypical. And like I said, it was just, oh, here's the beef with the Kazon. It's really bad right now. Oh, look, here's the beef with the Maquis and Federation. Oh, look, here's Janeway going to Tuvok. Like, there was just... nothing in this episode was presented in a novel and unique way, let alone the sci-fi, which wasn't in it either.
You're totally right. It does feel like somebody wrote this with a perfunctory understanding of the world.
Right.
That, like you said, they saw the whiteboard of, they had written who is Voyager's mortal enemy? Kazon. Okay, well, then the Kazon have to be in this. What are they on? A starship. Okay, so there has to be shots of the starship flying through the air. That kind of stuff. I have to say, though, that this episode for me started at a 10 and quickly declined after that. But it started amazing. I love it when Star Trek gets right into it. We don't have an opening that is meaningless and vapid and having nothing to do with the subsequent plot or episode, that we jump right into the action literally. And it was amazing. It wasn't just them having a fight with the Kazon. Yes, they were fighting with the Kazon, and it's at the tail end of the fight. Voyager kind of won, but kind of lost because their ship is in total disarray and disrepair. And they go through this little sequence. It's probably, 4 minutes long, tops, the cold open?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely longer than I expected it to be, but yeah.
Yeah. And it was great. We had a battle. Our ship is in terrible shape. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we do after this happens. It wasn't specific necessarily to any given fight. It was like, oh, this is a procedural of what happens after we're in a terrible fight. We have people who are injured. We have one person who's severely injured. We have to transport him directly. The ship is doing this. You do this. You go and do this. Chakotay, what's going on over here? Tuvok, what's going on over here? And it was all necessary because we needed to know that the next fight with these people were going to die. But we also got to see how efficient that this Federation starship can be. And it was so much fun to watch. And I was like, oh, finally we get to see the Starship Voyager in action doing stuff that they've been trained to do. And I loved it. And then
it never goes back to that. They never talk about it anymore until the very end, where they're like, do we have propulsion? And Bolano said, yes, we do. And they're like, great. Who knows what you did, but you did it.
Yeah. Chakotay, they end the cold open with Chakotay saying, we'll be lucky if we get warp power back.
Right.
Okay. We need to seriously reassess our situation here.
Yeah.
And then the next shot is then like, warp factor 7, engage. It was like, what? So did 6 months go by between the cold open and the next, the first act? Because you're right. We were fine. The Voyager, once again, was perfectly fine after that. And that was sort of where the decline steeply happened for me.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was going to be this episode where a very, not fast-paced, action-packed, but a subtle hum of urgency. Kind of like what I like about Enterprise.
Right.
Which is when they do that, it's not like they're battling the whole time, but they're always moving. There's always something happening. Like, we have to get from here to here. Okay, how do we do that? Let's talk to these Kazon. Okay, we're going to get from here to here with these Kazon. Oh, these Kazon betrayed us. Now we have to go somewhere else and get another alliance. Oh, who are these Trade guys? We don't know. Who cares? Let's just keep going. It's like I wanted that to kind of to feed off the momentum that they started with the opener.
Yeah.
And they didn't. It just turned into this weird kind of watered down political thing where you have the main Kazon guy who Seska is romantically involved with.
Right, but
maybe
who's sexist for no reason other than to show that he's a jerk.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it felt the Kazon feel very Klingon adjacent to me.
Yes.
They feel like sort of these, they have a small forest growing on their head, and it's not ridges, it's a forest, and they have kind of this barbaric sense.
I can absolutely picture, So how Klingons have like a mountain top on their forehead? What if we use a different geographical landmark on the main villain in Voyager? What could we use?
But yeah, Klingon adjacent. They just feel that. They feel like less developed Klingons to me.
Right. Well, yeah, like Klingons are angry and battle hungry, and these guys are just jerks.
Yeah, they're kind of just like the shitty cousins.
Yeah.
Of Klingon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not like Klingons are not angry all the time. They're just, as you said, they're kind of power hungry and war hungry.
Well, they're war hungry and they're
quite
passionate.
jolly.
Like that's what we talked about in an episode with Bolano. Like she just they love to have their feasts and
and their camaraderie.
Yeah.
They love their parties. Passionate is a good word.
Yeah.
Let's say it a few more times. But But these guys, they're just power hungry, and that's it. They're very one dimensional,
Right.
as a villain. It's because they don't seem to want anything else except to gain power. Like, we don't really know what they're after.
Right.
But anyway, the cold open ends with Chakotay making yet another plea for Janeway to abandon her obstinance in adhering to the Federation rules and regulations.
Yeah.
This seems to happen quite a bit, where she's steadfast in her adherence to this, and until she isn't, and then she gets to lecture every other person when she breaks the rules, how it's important to save our lives, and that sometimes you have to break the rules. Sometimes you have to make an omelet. You got to crack a few eggs.
No, this episode was Janeway is so smart, and don't question me, bitch. She said, I'm not giving up the Starfleet principles. And then she does, and everything falls apart. And then in the end, she gives her little speech of, this is why I'm right.
Yes, but they set up this whole thing that if they had encountered the Kazon again, they would be dead. That's
Right.
what they set up.
Right.
They made it very clear. They were very explicit in their language. We need to do something different because this is not working. And in fact, it's perilous.
Yes.
So they do that because, yes, it was risky, but doing the other way, where we just kept pointed ourselves toward the Alpha Quadrant and kept going, that's more risky.
There absolutely should have been mea culpa from her at the end, because in creating, like, it should have, there should have been something where she was like, we were all wrong in this, because she chose the wrong alliance, and now all of the Kazon are against them. And before, it was just kind of, they would run into a different sect of a Kazon, and they didn't like them, but the Kazon didn't like Starfleet, but they only had to deal with that sect of Kazon. And now, like, she brought the Trabe into it, so the Kazon all knew that, and then several of the Mages were shot down, so now Starfleet has an enemy with all of Kazon. And instead of her saying, like,
Yeah, it was
we
a
have a
pretty bad move.
big problem now.
I think that they were all enchanted by his earring. The Trabe guys, he was sort of kind of Bajoran adjacent a little bit. He was like a good looking kind of older dude who was well spoken and had an earring. That's how I see Bajorans. I'm sure Kira would be very impressed.
Right. Just like, you nailed it.
I know. Wow. What are you doing after work?
Oh, Kira would be impressed with him. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying Kira would be very impressed with your description of Bajorans.
Well, both. Yeah, both.
Why not both?
But anyway, so somebody dies in this first attack, and they have this stupid eulogy that goes on for what feels like 5 minutes. It's probably only 30 seconds. But I hate this. First of all, I hate it in anything, in any movie, TV show, whatever, where characters are just giving speeches to other characters. It's so boring. It's so lazy. It's sort of like sitting the audience down in front of a TV to watch a news broadcast about what's happening in the plot. And also, it's a eulogy about somebody we don't know. So we're just wasting time. It's like, who cares? This happens all the time. People die all the time.
Yep.
On the ship.
Well, yeah, that's what I was
Janeway.
wondering too. Just watching this, I wonder, because I know that we've seen other eulogies, which makes me wonder if they do a eulogy every time somebody dies, or if just when the script calls for it.
That's a good point. Well, I mean, they tried to tell us how important this guy was to everybody.
Oh, I know.
And of course it didn't work
Yeah.
because we don't care. We've never met him before. And all we got to see of him was just a blank stare when he was injured on the floor.
I was really hoping, so Chakotay talks about how he knew Bendera or whatever his name was. And he says, when I was a young Starfleet cadet, or when I was just joined the Maquis or something, and I get into this brawl, this guy shows up and he's got my back. And now suddenly it's 2 against 4. And those 4 guys now like my sense of humor. That guy introduced me to Bendera,
And that's how I learned how to make peanut butter cookies.
Right. Yeah. Like he never says his name in that story. He just talks about, this random guy shows up, and when I asked him why he did that, he was like, I like a good fight. Never saw him again.
I know, it wasn't even that amusing. It wasn't even like it just was boring. I was thinking to myself, why isn't there a 1.5 speed?
I
on Amazon
know.
still.
I know.
Because this episode kind of devolves into just talking. There's a lot of talking. Earnest talking.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next scene after the eulogy is Janeway seeking Tuvok's counsel about Chakotay's idea or about her encounter with people confronting her about this alliance. What are we going to do? This is not working.
Yeah.
And of course, Tuvok says they do. Again, this is proof positive of what you said about some intern who doesn't know Star Trek at all and normally just gets coffee was tasked with writing this episode, because the first thing out of Tuvok's mouth is a great visionary named Spock.
Right.
Once said. It's like, are you telling me you think that Janeway doesn't know who Spock is?
Right.
Or that anybody doesn't know? You're just saying, I mean, Spock is still alive.
Yeah.
You're making it sound like he's 150 years dead.
Right.
Or something like that. He's still alive in this timeline. I don't
true.
think he dies until much later.
Yeah.
So, of course, she would know. She should be like, yeah, I read his book. I read all of his books. Yeah.
Right. Well,
know
I saw the
exactly
movie.
what page. Yeah. We all saw the movie, Tuvok. What's your point?
Absolutely. Yeah. He should have said Ambassador Spock. You know.
Yes. Yeah. As you know, as you've probably met.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's a captain. I'm assuming that captains of these types of starships all get to meet Spock.
Oh,
Sound like Santa Claus?
Sorry.
What happened?
I just remembered something that I wanted to say from a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Well, you can say it. I'm not,
I was gonna say, and they wrapped up the eulogy by listening to a classic Measure of an Episode podcast,
that would have at least been entertaining.
right? But yeah, like
It would have been funny though if it was the Spaceballs thing, where they throw on the episode of us talking about the episode that has already happened.
Oh, nice, right. Probably not though. At the eulogy where we're bashing the guy, like that just seems in poor taste. But yeah, they kind of wrapped things up, and then the guy came over next to him and goes,
Oh yeah,
I was like, as you know.
That's a really good impression
Thanks.
of our bosun's whistle.
Yep.
Bosun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is spelled BOATSWAIN. So, why wouldn't it be bosun?
English.
Yeah. Speaking of, quick tangent there is a word in English, not American English, but UK English, that is spelled Fountainshire and is pronounced Fenshaw.
Yeah, that makes that
That tracks.
lines up.
Right. Anyway, all right.
What does it mean?
I think it's
Or
a
it's
place.
just a place.
Yeah.
Okay. I will give the Brits their credit though. They come up with really interesting names for stuff.
Yeah. We put no
It's always
effort.
very evocative.
Yeah. We put
Or we steal it.
Well, we put no
Put new
effort
on it.
into the names of things. Like we have Newfoundland, and our country is called the United States of America on the continent of America.
Yeah. We tend to not put much thought. We just put new in front of it,
Right.
which is very descriptive.
Yes.
Anyway, like Vermont just means green mountain.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. In French. Right.
What should we call this place? I don't know what the French say. Huh? I got to go back. I'll see you in about 6 months.
Right. They say lots of things. Like, what are you referring to? It's a whole language.
Who are you?
This guy?
Who let this guy come on the boat?
How did we not notice for 6 months? I'll see myself out.
Anyway, so Tuvok, they end this whole council session, both, with Janeway and Tuvok staring at a plastic plant. That bugged me for some reason. I don't know.
No, I agree completely. And I did like that moment, like I said at the beginning, but
The whole purpose for having the plant was so Tuvok could tell his story about he genetically modified these two things so they would work together. And at first they were very weak, but as they grew into each other, it became even stronger than the two by themselves. And Tuvok was wrong. Did not work out that way. Even though no matter how enchanted Janeway was with his metaphor about the plastic plant,
right.
it did not work out. Tuvok owes an apology to Janeway, and Janeway owes an apology to everybody else.
Yeah. She should not have taken his counsel. It would have been amazing if he came in later and he's like, about that plant.
Yeah. Totally died after you left.
Just its ashes.
Yeah. I burned it. I smoked it, then I burned it. Well, you know what I mean. Okay, so then they have this plan, and it kind of feels like it's supposed to be this widely scoped plot where Neelix goes over here, and then Voyager goes over here, and they do this. It's supposed to kind of have this really nice scale to it, but it's just Neelix goes to a booby bar to meet some guy who effectively does not help them.
Right.
And Neelix, this is so Neelix can get captured and then rescued by the Trabe. And all of the acting in this section, it felt like I was at Disneyland. It felt like when you encounter, the costumed people who are supposed to be in character at all times and cannot come out of character no matter what.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Well, and this was so unclear. I thought that he was being taken to some underground rebellion. I did not realize that he was being taken prisoner. I
didn't understand how they knew he was there. I guess because he walked into this booby bar. And I didn't know. You're right. I mean, it was only unclear to me in that I thought he was being captured by the Kazon and was going to be questioned about Voyager. Not that he was part of this rebellion.
Right. Because
they didn't even know about the Trabe until Neelix met that guy.
Right.
Met the hunky not Bajoran.
Yeah.
Hunky not Bajoran was the first title of Funky Called Medina. But he changed it. Yeah, you're right. That whole Neelix section where he's at the booby bar did not make sense in that why would they put him with the rest of those people? And why were they all there?
Right.
Specifically?
Yeah.
It felt very convenient. Almost to the point where it felt like there was a section of this episode missing.
I don't think so. Like I said, this episode was so weak. The way it was plotted out, it very much seems like that was exactly how it was written.
And so then we learn about the Trabe, and they get rescued, and they have dinner with all of the key command crew of Voyager, and which is also just a lazy scene.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like whenever they were having a meal in Star Trek, it's lazy.
I mean, whenever we spend any time there, yes. I feel like we can have scenes with meals where, the characters are just giving a little bit of character. Like, this happens in TNG. Like I remember a scene with Riker and Troy having a conversation before they went off to Data's performance, which sounds horrible saying it out loud.
Riveting.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. They do it in Next Gen, but I will say that I don't like it when they do it then either, because it does feel like, can we do something else? Is there something else they can be doing while we're relating this information to the audience?
Sure.
Other than we need them, it happened before a couple of episodes. Or the devil.
Devils do.
Devils do, yeah.
Okay.
And all these terrible things were happening, and then Picard has tea with one of the victims of this terrible thing that was happening. And it just feels like, okay, we need a long scene where they can just say as much information as possible. So I think eating something always makes sense, or drinking something. I get it. It's easier to do it that way, but we can always find better ways to do this.
Right. Well, and we even talked about a better way in that one. Like he just came from an earthquake, and he was worried about his crew. Like, he should have been in sickbay, or he should have been the one drinking tea to calm his nerves while he shared the information to Picard. Like, they should not have been sitting and having a cup of tea, sharing a cup of tea together.
Yes.
And I mean, maybe the same thing here. Like, they didn't need to have everyone there. It could have been this could have been the opposite. It could have been Janeway and Trabe just in her ready room.
Well, they kind of had a version of that, which was, I guess, a little bit more dynamic. It was after the sickbay scene where we learned that all of them are in pretty good health, except for they walk. Then that awkward scene where they're walking down the hall.
Yeah,
and it's a another oneer, and it's from behind, which I felt like was maybe just, let's do something new. We always are filming them walking toward the camera. Let's have them walk away from the camera and see how it feels. It didn't work.
Right.
Or at least they didn't do it interestingly enough.
Yeah.
I think maybe they were showing off how the set is continuous. It's not just it's not just three walls,
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool, but it felt awkward. It was not done well. Right. I felt like they should have been, because they actually do this a lot. There was another episode in Voyager where they use that hallway quite a bit as long sequences for long sequences of talking.
Right.
They do that. We saw another episode a long time ago where it's the one where it's like fractured, where they're going from different parallel universes and they have to jump in between them. It's usually Chakotay and Janeway, but the Janeway doesn't know anything that's happening. Mm-hmm. She's from before Voyager got lost. I don't remember. It was like a really good concept, but it just turned into them talking most of the time.
Well, it turned into a video game. Like they just kept going into the next level and finding the new thing and then going to the next level. Yeah.
Which is actually kind of very descriptive of this episode as well, except I think a less interesting concept. just the same thing.
This is like a point and click adventure.
Sort of, yeah. It's like but done with cards.
Right. Well, the point and click adventures are you go over to something and it says take, look, use, and you look and it just says this device looks old and weary.
Except the person playing this game was hitting pass the entire time. Well, let's pass it.
I don't need to look at that.
Yeah.
Just the thing that irritated me the most about this episode was just that Voyager typically has a concept that they will introduce that is very cool to explore, and they don't do that. And this episode didn't even have that. It was just they introduced, I mean, they kind of did at the very beginning of the episode with the damage. Like, it would have been an amazing episode that I would love to see, which I don't think they've done yet, is have a ship like this where they are damaged and they are scrambling to figure out how to keep themselves afloat, keep the ship safe, keep the ship manageable, sustainable, until they get to their final destination.
Right.
And that would have been an amazing
But they
episode. And that's what it looked like they were starting with. And they didn't do that.
It felt like, yeah, they didn't do that. It felt like, you're right, they felt like they were going to be limping through this section of space because they needed desperately to find someone to help them.
Right.
And that wasn't the case at all. They seemed to repair their ship perfectly. And then they said, well, we need an alliance with these people. And it just felt like, oh, you're choosing these people because you had dinner with the hunky,
right,
not Bajoran. And I don't know, I lost, it was so meandery.
Yeah.
What happened to the part where you desperately needed an alliance because you were going to be attacked imminently? I don't know. It felt like it felt like this was maybe all of the bad snippets of other storylines stitched together.
Right.
Like, well, we have another episode here somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and then at the end, when they said it's going to be somebody who has to leave the meeting early, and then they figure it out, and then they take him with them.
Yeah. Well, she wanted to give him a part of her mind.
Right.
What do you call it? A piece of her mind. Part of her mind. What?
Yeah,
Look at this stuff.
I was. Give me no lip. Get off my ship.
Nice. What's the finish? What's the finish?
Gave you part of my mind.
All right, I'll accept it.
By
the way, that section where they first have the conference,
yeah,
and they're introducing all of the different mages.
Did you watch it on Hulu or on Prime?
Prime.
Oh, me too. Okay. So you heard the applause. I don't think it's on Hulu. I was told that it's not on
yes.
Hulu. Yeah.
The laugh track.
Right.
That was under all of these different, like, people were literally whistling and applauding there was 150 people in this room.
Yes.
And there were these weird canned fanfares.
Yeah. The MIDI.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yes.
It felt like a 90s video game.
Yes.
Early 90s.
Well, it felt like, to me, it felt like The Princess Bride. That was exactly the vibe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a joke? It felt like a joke.
Right.
It felt like somebody got a hold of this. It was their last day. Sweet.
Totally.
They were leaving the business entirely.
Right.
It's just their little signature of the middle finger.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, if you have the ability to watch this on Hulu, go watch it and let us know. Are there fanfares and whistles and applause when they're introducing the mages? I desperately want to know.
As do I.
Can't be the first people to have noticed this, right?
So on Memory Alpha, where the information's held, like they talked about how there was the canned track. I've got to pull it up.
Please tell me there's a story behind this. I can't wait.
No, there isn't. Yeah.
This episode just keeps disappointing me.
On Netflix, when the Majas of the Kazon sect are being introduced, the sound of trumpets along with fanfare and applause is heard for each one. However, as of December 2017, this seems to have been removed. On Amazon.com streaming Prime service, the trumpet, fanfare, and applause are still present as of September 2021.
So it's a thing. They went back and fixed it.
Well, they're saying it was still on Netflix, and they're saying it's still on Prime.
Well, I thought they said after 2017 it had been removed.
No.
Somewhere.
Oh, yeah. As of December 2017, it seems to have been removed. Yeah. Yep. That's true.
So they went back and fixed something of this just old Star Trek television show.
Right.
That's so weird. It was important enough to somebody to open that up and take that stuff out.
See, right. Well, and it must have been there originally because there is in editing the pause for them to receive the fanfare. Every time they walked in, they stopped for a moment in front of the camera.
Right. Got their picture taken.
Yeah. So if they remove it, then, when the last one shows up and there's all the cheering and the whistling, like you said, he's just standing there like swinging his shoulders around for no reason.
Waving to nobody.
Right.
Because it does kind of feel like we're in a bigger room because of that, because he's speaking loudly when he's introducing them. But then you hear the applause, and it just doesn't track. It doesn't even fool us with our monkey brains.
No, I was genuinely confused. I thought that it was just a single conference room, and then they had this applause, and I said, is there an audience? Like, where is this happening?
Well, yeah, because they set up the whole room where the guy is talking to Neelix about the shape of the table.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big mystery that has no answer.
Yeah.
I want to know the answer.
Well, and just
I really want to now spend a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of this.
in
Like,
story
this is not my brain
continuity,
works.
that means that they had an audience watch this ship fly down and shoot all of these mages.
Right. I mean, it does feel like if there was an audience of that size, it was teleconference.
Right.
They were watching some sort of feed. So that means that they cut it off at a certain point.
But that also means it's
I
an
guess.
interactive feed because we heard the audience.
But we don't hear any boos or hisses while they're having their actual conference.
Right.
You think that would be part of it?
Yeah. Or an applause whenever anybody said, when the sexist mage started ranting about how they weren't going to listen to a woman. There should have been thunderous applause from that.
Okay, so I don't understand something all of a sudden about this episode. I don't
Glad
understand
you
why the
clarified.
Trabe needed Voyager, because they made it very clear that they have a lot of firepower and a lot of ships, and they can do a lot of damage by themselves. And I guess ostensibly Voyager is still damaged and not operating at 100%. So why did the Trabe want to bother with Voyager? Because the Voyager is not liked by the Kazon. The idea that Voyager could some sort of broker some sort of conference between the two of them, that doesn't make any sense either, because they don't like the Trabe just as much as they don't like Voyager.
Yeah, but Voyager was putting in the good faith effort to try and resolve things. And I think I think it was lost the moment the Kazon learned that the Voyager was working with the Trabe. But so you're right. Like, I mean, your confusion is well founded.
Yeah, why did the Trabe need Voyager? Because Voyager told the Kazon, we have an alliance with the Trabe, your mortal enemy.
Right.
So as far as the Kazon were concerned, Voyager was the Trabe.
Right.
So why did the Trabe need Voyager to broker a deal? I don't understand. Why not just go and shoot them?
Yeah.
Or broker your own deal and then shoot them there? I didn't get why Voyager was needed to do any of this stuff. I guess there's no answer.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I think it's a great question, and it's just one that will never be answered.
Right. It's a question I care less about than the whistles and the applause, though.
Right.
And the fanfares.
Yeah.
I want to know the answer to that. I'm willing to burn calories on that one. Well, listeners, if you have the ability to watch this on Hulu, go watch it and let us know. Are there fanfares and whistles and applause when they're introducing the mages? I desperately want to know.
As do I.
Speaking of that, if you enjoy our podcast, please go out and rate 5 stars. But leave reviews. Leave reviews. Rate the podcast. It really helps us get the podcast to more people. And hopefully, if you really like the podcast, then give Patreon a look. We got a lot of cool stuff over there. We got other discussions that are not Star Trek related, usually pretty nerdy. Talk about comic book stuff. A lot of Superman discussion. Did we talk about anything else besides Superman?
Columbus.
Columbus. A lot of medical advice we give out.
That's true.
So anyway, chuck in a buck if you like the podcast. Really helps us keep the lights on over here. So I think that this episode, definitely not a proper Star Trek episode. Not even close, I guess.
Yeah. Nope, not a proper Star Trek episode, and I did not like it.
No. I loved the beginning.
Right.
It was so good. It was just well constructed, too. It felt like, they've got somebody who knows what they're doing to direct this and to write it and to get all of the stuff. Because they kind of bookended the episode with a lot of ship procedural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had that scene at the end where they were talking to, Janeway asked B'Elanna, how's the warp core doing? And they asked Neelix, how much food do we got?
Right. But everybody was like, we're all A-okay.
Yeah. Really? It was like a day ago. Things were pretty bad.
Right.
It's like, no,
See, and this is the part that bugs me. Like, I know that you like when they jump right into the action, and I like when they jump right into the action too, where the action is something that's genuinely captivating. You know, like Voyager being in trouble. This isn't the series finale, so I'm not worried about it. And when the conflict is just being attacked and shields are down and losing control to various systems like that, I don't care about. And I wait for the dust to settle so then I can find out what's happening in the story.
Right. I guess I liked that it was a bit of a mystery too. Okay, Voyager isn't usually in this kind of trouble where the whole ship is falling apart.
Right.
And I wanted to know why. But I also liked that it was a thoughtfully constructed procedural of what happens in a crisis on the ship. I felt like it's normally what happens with Voyager is there's a lot of technobabble, front-loaded with technobabble. They suggest something, it ultimately works, and that's the end of it. Whereas this was triage. It felt very organized. It felt like this is how a ship would operate in this kind of crisis. And that's what I liked about it. It wasn't so much that it's part of the story. In fact, it kind of wasn't part of the story. It was just sort of a way to start the episode and to communicate that they need an alliance. But I felt, because it could have been poorly constructed, and it was just the first 5 seconds. It's like, woo, barely survived that one. Let's get out of here. You know, that kind of thing. Right. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
They spent some time. Maybe they spent all of their time constructing this.
And that was the end of it.
But yes, not a proper Star Trek episode.
Right.
And there wasn't even a moral dilemma, was there?
There was. I mean, Janeway was asked to compromise the Starfleet principles, and she wound up doing that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Totally right.
Yeah. So
it still doesn't count. It doesn't count. Should we see what we're watching next,
please? We are watching a Star Trek episode this time around. And it's going to be season 3, episode 18 of the original series, The Lights of Zatar. And the blurb says, on Prime, the Enterprise must deal with discorporeal cloud-like aliens who have already destroyed the inhabitants of a library planet and plan to eliminate the Enterprise crew if they cannot acquire a human host.
Oh, more cloud monsters. Excellent.
I'm excited. Actually, it's been a long time since we've seen a cloud monster, so it'll be.
I know that's
it's like visiting an old friend.
How is it possible? There can't be that many cloud monsters in this show. We seem to catch all of them.
I don't know. I have no idea how many there are. I think they're all in the original series, though. I don't think any other series had cloud monsters. I mean, I know that Next Generation had a few sparkle monsters, like star monsters. The one, I think the Child is one of them, where the star monster goes into Troy.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go watch it. I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
No, wait. I did it last time. Do you think I should say I've been Paul so you can do the Kirk? Let's do it that way, because I did the impression last time.
Okay.
I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that.
All right. Very good. Very good. Fair enough.
No? Do you want another one? But you already knew that.
I might use that one.